We have to give a future. We need to give hope. And we have to encourage the Ukrainian population to imagine their future. That it is our duty and it is our interest to do this, because if they lose hope, they're no longer going to fight. If they're no longer going to fight,
listen to this.
The geopolitical consequences will be major, and they are not in our interest. So there's a real spin behind this.
I want you to understand something. I'm gonna play this one more time. Stop right there. This was not caught off, like on a hot mic. This wasn't backdoor discussions that someone secretly recorded, and they didn't just say this. This was a short that the WEF posted on their YouTube page. And let's appreciate what exactly is being said in here.
We have to give a future. We need to give hope. And we have to encourage the Ukrainian population to imagine their future. That it is our duty and it is our interest to do.
There's no question it's in your interest to encourage them to keep fighting a war that many predicted they could never win in the first place. It's in your interest to not push diplomacy. And it's in your interest to lead to the slaughter a generation of Ukrainian men and women.
Do this, because if they lose hope, they're no longer going to fight.
Oh my goodness, if they realize that they should negotiate a peaceful resolution, well then where the hell are we going to launder our money for the next 5 years? If they realize that, okay, cut your losses, maybe. Then they might actually stop fighting. We might actually have peace. That's not good for the military-industrial complex. That's not good for our interests. What are our interests? Using the Ukrainian people as proxies for this war against Russia. We'll fight to the last Ukrainian, says every member of that military-industrial complex. But what he says at the end.
If they're no longer going to fight, the geopolitical consequences will be major, and they are not in our interest.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. If Ukrainians won't fight, the geopolitical consequences will not be in our interest, says this man in his wonderful, avec son accent formidable français. Oh, ce sont des conséquences géopolitiques majeures, putain.
There's a real spin behind it.
Oh, there's a spin behind it. It's a spin. How can you justify slaughtering people? How can you convince them to march off to the slaughter? Well, some of them apparently are not doing it all that willingly, hence the conscription of any fighting-aged male in Ukraine. Okay, well, that really, it's not really on topic for today. I was going to start with Joe Biden calling, everyone who disagrees with him extreme MAGA Republican. That might have been a more appropriate intro video, but it was 4 seconds long. And it wasn't long enough to do the standard intro while everyone trickles in. If you don't know who we are talking with today, you're gonna know. We're gonna do a whole series because this has to be memorialized. It has to be memorialized in real time, documented, so that if and when the proverbial iron fist comes down and tries to memory hole things, people have seen it and people have understood what's happening. Okay, standard disclaimers, or y'all know how this works. Viva Frei, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler. We're going to start on YouTube, Viva Frei, Rumble, Viva Frei, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. I should have made sure that we are live everywhere, and we are. Live on Rumble, perfect, and we are live on vivabarneslaw.locals.com, perfect. Let me just play it and make sure. Good. And, excuse me, we're going to end on YouTube 20, 30 minutes in, move over to Rumble exclusively. I'll post the entire interview to YouTube later on. It's not a question of, weighing our words. I don't give a crap about that anymore. It's a question of favoring the platforms that actually support and promote free speech like Rumble. Okay, and the link to Rumble is up there. If anybody wants to come on over right now to vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where we have a wonderful community of above average members. Come on over, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Okay, and now, for those of you who don't know, let me refresh here and just make sure we're good. Good. Alfredo Luna, if you don't know who he is, AlphaWarrior. I was going to say Alpha Male, but AlphaWarrior, he's got his own podcast now. He's got his own Rumble channel. He's on another platform, which we're going to talk about at length. But I will let him give us the 30,000-foot overview before we dive into childhood, upbringing, military service, and being the object and the victim of a weaponized persecution. Alpha, are you ready? Sir, At the risk of asking the obvious question, how goes the battle? And while you answer that, I'm going to go to locals and see if our audio levels are matching. 30,000 foot overview. Who are you?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I'll start off with my greatest accomplishment. I'm a dad, so that takes the lead. After that, very interested into the upbringing. I think some people will be surprised, especially some good friends that are watching today. Honored to be here. So thanks for having me. Thanks for the chat, the audience willing to take time to hear my story. Your guys' time is valuable, and you're going to spend it with us. So I appreciate that.
It's amazing because I get a lot of DMs and I get a lot of people saying you got to have people on, and like I have trouble keeping up myself with everything that's going on, and so I stumbled across it. I went to your Twitter feed, and then it was bang, and then I DM and you responded very quickly. So that's how it just happens, and people have to be patient. The lightning strikes, and then life is created. Okay, so what's your real name is?
Full name is Alfredo Luna Jr.
Now let's see this. If there's a junior, there's a senior Alfredo. So, I mean, you're born and raised in America. Where are you from?
Yeah, born and raised in Southern California. Only time I've ever left the country is just to go to war. Then came back right here to beautiful US of A.
That's okay. We're gonna get there. What did your parents do, or what do they do?
My mom, she's worked for special education kids as an assistant teacher for over 35 years. She ended up having a stroke because of this story back in November of 2021. So she has since retired. My dad is independent. He contracts, does all kinds of work, electrical work, landscaping work, all that. Just a normal mom and dad.
And military family?
No. I was the first one. There's a cousin that went into the Marine Corps. A cousin I looked up to. So if anything, that's probably where I knew I was going to go into the military. But I think the influence probably came from him as to which branch I chose.
Now, you said Southern California. Now, I only know that from a song because apparently it never rains in Southern California. Bada bing, bada boom. May I ask the indiscreet question as to how old you are?
I am 44 years old.
Shut the front door. When's your birthday?
September 9th, 1979.
September. So I'm older than you by... Hold on. You're going to turn 45 in September. Yeah, I got 5 months on you. 44. Man, okay. Won't spend too much time on it, but childhood, how many siblings, normal childhood? Were you a troublemaking kid?
No. Actually, I was a nerd jock, undercover nerd, because I played sports, but I had very strict parents. Both my parents came from, very, very poor backgrounds. So it was just me and my little brother, 6-year difference. They just wanted to make sure that we were set up for success. So yeah, a B in my house was equivalent to an F. That's the way my dad saw things. And and I tested that one time and I learned the hard way. So, very strict upbringing. Parents were very into the church. We were raised not just Catholic, as my mom says, we're raised Roman Catholic. That's the way our household was. And if I got in trouble, it was go read the Bible, and it better not be the story of Noah again.
Can you, I will say a little Jew boy, can you explain what that means? Not just Catholic, but Roman Catholic? Is Roman Catholic a particularly strict variant of Christianity?
It's what part of Catholic is not strict. It's more of the a lot of the old school cultural stuff is really enforced. It's the traditional cathedral style churches. You're going to go through all the sacraments when you're supposed to go through them. My understanding of it, I didn't get into it as much as my parents did.
Now, have you asked your parents what they think of Lil Nas's next cover album? Okay, forget that. We were talking about that yesterday on The Unusual Suspects. Lil Nas likening himself to Jesus. Okay, so you say a closet, well, not a closet nerd, but an undercover nerd, athlete. Are you over 6 feet as well?
No. I'm right at the threshold.
Okay, so you're still a monster as far as I'm concerned. And so, athlete as a kid growing up, I guess the question is always, how do you get into the military? When do you make that decision to go train and then ultimately to go serve?
As far as the athlete part, when I first got into football, it was tackle football, Pop Warner football. This is back in the 80s. I had no business being in there that first season. My mom was the one that I had the neck roll, the arm pads. Like I looked like the Michelin guy out there on the field, and once the team realized like this kid just has no athletic capability, they would just run my way. And this is back when if you paid, you played. So I hated football that first year, And when the season came to an end, and I share this story because I think it'll make sense where a lot of my character came from later on in life. My dad takes me, we go home. I'm getting ready to put my gear away. And he's like, no, we go to the side of the house. And he says, put your helmet back on, put your shoulder pads back on. And I'm like, remember, I'm like 8 years old, maybe 9 by this point. And he says, come and hit me. Big grown man, my father. And, so I just kind of run and he's like, no, hit me. And he's pushing me back. And he does this a couple of times. So now, I got tears in my eyes. I'm like, we just got embarrassed. Now I'm going through this. And he just keeps hit me. And finally, I just get so much anger and juice in me that I'm just like, I'm going to leave it all out here on the side of the house. And I bury my helmet right into my dad's groin stomach area. And he falls down on the ground and he's gasping for air. And now I'm like, I'm about to get the worst whooping of my life. And he kind of sits up and he says, if you can knock me down, there's not one kid out there that you can knock down. And he just walks inside. And the following year, I went back into football and was the most valuable player every year until I graduated high school. And so that confidence was instilled by my father. But that being said, the strongest one in my family was my mom.
You have to elaborate on that. What do you mean by that?
My mom, she, you would say the traditional mom, she took care of us, she raised us. But she also worked. I remember prior to going to, preschool and kindergarten, she would clean apartments in the apartment complex that we lived in. And we'd be right there. She have 80s music on. It's the reason I like 80s music, if everybody's wondering. And she's cleaning walls and cleaning, sliders. And I just watched her work. And then we'd go home. She'd get everything ready for my father. He, put his boots out. And that just never changed. My mom was working from before I woke up until I went to sleep. She was just always working. And then unfortunately, later on in life, year after I graduated, there would be a divorce and my mom never remarried. She said, like I said, Roman Catholic. She said, well, I'm married to God. And, she continued that her entire life. And it just, anything that was just difficult, she just never showed it, from, my grandma passing away. She's just, the woman's strength is just, it's immeasurable.
You said a year after high school?
Yeah.
High school in America is grade 9?
9th to 12th.
All right. And so this is a year after you're out of high school. So a year after grade 12. So you're 6 years older than your younger brother.
Yes.
So your younger brother's still in the house living through a split up. Is it nasty? Is it relatively amicable as far as divorces go?
They did a good job of kind of shielding us from it. Hindsight, I think it was probably a lot worse than we probably saw, but we didn't really show a lot in front of us. I mean, the initial night that, it was announced, my mom told us about it. That was a pretty emotional night. But from that point on, there was not a whole lot that they really shared until it was over.
I've got people in the chat might get angry that I have to ask this because I need to know that. So do they sit you down together or does your mother sit you down alone with your brother and give you the news?
No, I was told separate. I don't know how they told my little brother, but my mom's the one that told me. She actually put my dad on the spot. And she's like, your father got something to tell you. And he was just like, my mom's name's Felicita, so everybody calls her Flea. And he's like, Flea. And she's like, no, either you tell your son or I will. And so then that's how I got the news.
That's interesting. Okay. And so you're older, probably easier to deal with this, whether or not you retrospectively understood signs that you didn't put together until it happens. So you graduate from high school, and now for someone who's never served, how does this work? Do you apply to the military? Do you go to university and get into it afterwards? Like, how do you go about that thing?
So, like I said, my parents forced me to do really good in school, and I didn't want to go to college. I was like, now, I'm on my own. I did what they want to do. I want to do life the way I want. I don't want to go to these 4 universities. I know everything, right? I'm 17 and a half years old. I want to work and go to junior college. And so I did. Was still dating a girl through high school, so that had some influence there too. Wasn't the brightest outside of the books, I guess, with that decision. And I wanted to join the military. And man, this is really going to take the alpha title from me, but I'll get it back later. She's like, if you join the Marines, I'm breaking up with you. And I was like, man, I really like this girl. And so I put it off, and we dated longer, ended up having, my first two little girls in 2000, 2001, and 9/11 happens. And I'm actually working as a construction company doing
Let me pause you there. I'm sorry, you had two kids by the time you're 21 years old.
Yep, back to back.
Are you not that you're Roman Catholic. Are you married to this girl, or are these out of wedlock children?
At the moment, they're out of wedlock.
All right. Holy cow. I mean, that's wildly young for most people to have kids. You have two kids. I'll ask, accidentally, or was it a plan?
It was accident, surprise. I mean, wasn't being too careful, so wasn't dumb. Knew it was running the risk, but it wasn't planned.
Okay. Two kids. How far apart?
1 year. One born February 10th, and the other one born May 2nd.
February 10th, May 2nd, February, March, April, May. Dude, they say you're not supposed to engage in intercourse for 6 weeks after the. Okay, never mind. I'm not getting that far into it. So you have two kids by the time you're 21. Then 9/11 happens.
Yep.
Okay, now I can anticipate where this is going. But please tell us.
Yeah, I'm working a construction job with my dad and my uncle. It's remodeling some apartment complexes, and I'm working on the electrical work. And on the patios, this old couple, and they're watching TV. And obviously, it's early in the morning here on the West Coast. And the news pops on because the first tower got hit. So I just kind of stop, and I'm just looking, at their TV with them. And they know, I mean, they didn't mind, and watch the second thing happen. And then after that, it's, everybody kind of knows the news of how it develops. So we go sit down, have lunch with all the workers. And I tell my dad, hey, I'm going to the recruiting office tomorrow. And he was adamantly against it, and went the next day. They were closed, surprisingly. And so then I went the day after that. They were open. I enlisted, took the test. They, to summarize this process, they were trying to push me to get into JAG because I scored really, really, really high in the ASVAB.
JAG is what? JAG is what?
The Judge Advocate General.
Okay.
And
I know there was a television show called JAG, but I never watched it.
So that was a good one too. And I said, no, I don't. So they would push it. And I said, listen, I want boots on the ground. I want to go over there and, slay bodies, do the Marine Corps thing of what they did to our country. And so ended up joining the infantry unit, went to boot camp. And then in February, on Valentine's Day of 2003, we landed in Kuwait, and we're in Kuwait just before the war started.
Well, now you're, I don't know if she's your wife at the time now, but at least the mother of your two kids' girlfriend who didn't want you joining beforehand, I presume wants you joining even less after 9/11.
Yeah, she was not happy with the decision, but this is when I realized how much I love my country and how much of a patriot I am, and stood my ground and said, well, we're doing this together, or I'm doing it on my own.
How old are your kids at this time? They're 2 and 3 years old, or 1 and 2?
2 and 3.
Dude, so you have, it's unfathomable, not unfathomable, like I can sort of empathize and put myself in your shoes, but it's probably unfathomable to most. 2 young kids, 9/11, and you say, I'm signing up, I'm going to go into harm's way, I'm going to leave my family and go fight for what I think is right at this time, and you leave your 2 young children and join the United States Marine Corps.
I joined, and I remember it would have been the 13th, February 13th, before we flew out. I remember going into the room because we all lived in one little room, and looking at my 2 little girls that were sleeping on the bed. And she's like, "Do you want to wake them up to say goodbye?" And I had already said goodbye before they went to sleep. And I said, "No, I don't want to wake them up. They're just going to cry." And I that was the image I burned in my head, and that was the image I kept with me the entire time I was out there.
What's it like leaving? Is she your wife or girlfriend at the time?
But at that time, now we're married.
Okay. Oh, you're with her now.
Yes, we're together.
So
we stay together.
Holy crap!
No, we're not together anymore.
Oh, not together. Oh, darn. Okay. Well, I was going to say it had a happy ending, but I guess it had a happy middle. And now it's.
Yeah.
Have you seen the movie Interstellar?
I have.
Okay. I mean, like, I don't have these experiences, but in as much as a scene of a movie makes you feel it. The scene when Matthew McConaughey's going off and the daughter says, like, I don't want to leave you angry like this, and then she chases him down as he's driving off. I mean, it makes you feel feelings. I mean, it's and I can only imagine that's to some extent what it's like, but exponentially, like on steroids for the person going through it. And you're off and you're gone. And how long? Like, what's this whole process like? You get, what is it like? Where do you go? What do they do with you? When do you come back?
Yeah, we flew from March Air Force Base, which is in Moreno Valley, still Southern California. We did a layover in Maine, and then from Maine we landed in Frankfurt, Germany. And then from Frankfurt, Germany, we landed in Kuwait. And so when you're flying over the Middle East for the first time, especially at night, I mean everything's dark. You can just see, a little bit of the. I mean, as high as you are, you can still see some of the dust trails from vehicles that are driving. But we landed in Kuwait, and this is where you realize like this is real. Now the war hasn't started yet, because that starts about a month later. But we land in Kuwait, and it's just like everybody's like, get off, get off, get off. You're like you're dismounting the plane. It's like the movies. There's a line of black SUVs. You go to each one, you give information. You go to the next one. They're doing an eye scan. You go to the next one. You're getting. I think they gave us an ID or took our IDs, one of the two, and then you move into trucks, and then heading off to whatever camp that they sent us to, and then it's a whole lot of training and downtime while you're in Kuwait.
You're there. You're not yet fully trained. You're there for the training.
Well, we're trained, very, very good training, but now you're doing specific training to what you're most likely going to encounter in this kind of geographical area.
Okay, amazing. How long does that training last, and what do you experience when you're out there?
Well, we trained until March 17th. I want to say about a day and a half before the rest of the world knew. We got the news that we're going to be crossing the LOD. And at that point, it's this comms check, it's weapons check, it's health check. It's making sure everybody is at 110% ready to go in battle, checking all the vehicles. So I was lucky. We're infantry scouts, part of a reconnaissance battalion, and it's LAVs. So all the other grunts usually give me a hard time about this because we get taxied around while the other regular grunts have to march. So I always kind of get a little grief for that, but I just say they're jealous. It's okay, you'll survive. And we went, and for those that don't know the LAV, it's like the Army's Bradley, except we have wheels instead of tracks, and it's light armored instead of the better armored.
LAV is light armored vehicle.
Yeah, light armored vehicle. So it has a 25 millimeter Bush cannon on it. It's a beast of a vehicle.
Wow. And so you're out there in the thick of it for how long?
We crossed on March 18th, and I was there until August the 18th of 2003.
So March 2001.
Yeah, March 2000. Oh, I'm sorry, March 2003 to August 18th of 2003.
Was that your? Do they call they call that a tour, right? Or is that like one sequence of service?
So now they'll call them. So eventually they turn into deployments, but in the beginning of the war, this was new for us. So most of us, I actually think almost all of us, this was the first like combat deployment, because I don't think there were very many older guys that were there from the first Desert Storm. But we were told, hey, once you Marines get to Baghdad, we're going to get you guys home. So you tell a bunch of Marines that that's the ticket to get home. A lot of motivation. Well, we needed to get into Baghdad a lot faster than the campaign anticipated. So then it was like, well, no, we got to keep you guys around. And, went. So now, once the war, I want to say once it got to OIF 3, the third phase, is when it starts to turn into regular deployments. You'll get Marines that go out there for 6 months. I think the Army does a year. And now you start having this consistent time pattern. But in the beginning, you don't know. Like, you can be there 6 months, 9 months, a year. Until we establish control, you're not going home.
And how many deployments did you do?
That was it. That was the only combat deployment that I did.
And so you're back home August 2003, and you don't deploy for military again at any point.
No, I don't deploy any. So because I had my 2 little girls at the time, they didn't allow me to go active duty. So they put me part of the reserve battalion. So I was part of the 4th Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion in Camp Pendleton. So the first 2/3 of my career was like active duty because of combat. But once that was done, then it went back to the reserve role where you go, once a month, and then the 2 weeks training throughout the year.
Okay, now we're gonna I got some more questions about service, and we're gonna fill in the missing period until you get raided by the FBI over a tweet or over some tweets. Everybody, get your butts on over to Rumble. Link is there. The link is in the pinned comment. And we're going to continue this there, but this will all be replayed on YouTube tomorrow. So doesn't change anything on our end. Alpha, give me 2 seconds, and we're going to end on YouTube now.